is medieval times! Yeah! Are you prepared for a night of feasting and sport, the likes of which you will never forget? Yes!
Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey, chapter 207. It is the first day of the week, aka the Vulcan Raven workout. I am on my way to the gym right now. It has gotten measurably cold since the last time I've gone to the gym, thus the big jacket's out. And it still fits, which is kind of nice. But anyways, on my way to the gym right now, about the same time I normally go, so not too bad. Feeling all right. But to the main subject matter at hand, Synchronicity Part 2. So this one is something that I've been talking about before. I've made another video about Synchronicity, and I wanted to discuss it today because something happened over the weekend, which was an interesting thing. Over the weekend, I watched the movie The Cable Guy. Maybe not for the first time in my life, but I have not seen it in its entirety maybe in 2 decades. So if I had seen it, I might have seen it when I was a kid, but I don't remember it. It's been a while. Let's just say that. So as I was watching it as an adult here, I'm like, okay, watching it. And then we get to a scene, which I played at the beginning here, where they go to medieval times. And I thought, that's funny. I made an entire video about how I don't like the medieval era of stuff, or like, just going into that Renaissance style of stuff. It's not necessarily my thing. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. So then I was like, wow. That was interesting. Like, 2 completely different things came together. Now, was this, and then I thought to myself, is this a moment of synchronicity? Slightly, but not really. I think that it was just happened to happen. One thing was at the same time as the other. Sure, one video happened to happen at the same time, and these 2 things might have happened. And it could have been something, but I also said, listen, it's just a happenstance, because I feel like it's one or the other. But I feel like this is the time where I would like to discuss when it happens in my life and what it means in my mind, because this is part of how I see synchronicity playing out in the world as. So we'll get to that more in detail in the voiceover. But for now, I wanted to say that this one-off instance was just, I feel like, a one-off. Now, if something else completely different comes up in the next few days, where it comes up, then maybe something will come of it. Maybe in the voiceover, something else has come up, and I will be able to discuss it, and it's just kind of funny, and these things just keep streaming along together. And the thing about it is, and this is why it's just interesting to me, because these are 2 things that were completely separate whatsoever. One was a filmed in 1994, and the other is me talking about a video that happened to happen today. I just happened to watch The Cable Guy this weekend as I'm editing this video. So there are things that happen to happen. There are certain things that are circumstance. I'm not going to lie. There are just things that coincidence, but sometimes you gotta believe that there is no such thing as coincidence. So I just found it funny, and then it also gave me the idea of, I could talk about synchronicity. I think in the voiceover I will get into more detail about what it means if you find something that is synchronous, and if you are going down that rabbit hole of finding things that are happening to keep reoccurring, and what that means to you, and how you could use that to benefit you. But we will talk more about that on the inside. Alright, so starting this day off with dips, which were pretty good. But anyways, back to the main subject matter at hand. Synchronicity Part 2. So this one will be a little bit more of a personal way of how I see synchronicity in the world, really. And to say, like, these 2 things happen to be happenstance, yes. I personally don't think that they amounted to much, but then looking back at it from hindsight is 2020, of course, and maybe I was going down a good path. Maybe I was going down the path that I was supposed to, and the universe was telling me something via these things. But for some reason, I strayed off of that path, and I think it was pretty obvious afterwards that I did stray off this path, as the rest of my time in December was terrible, and then thus a injury happened, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But still, it is something that has happened. So basically now, looking at it now, maybe I noticed a little too early, maybe I noticed a little too late, who knows? But I think I had gotten off the beaten path. And I think that most of the time when looking at something like synchronicity, It's one of those things that you might notice it, but you might not notice it. And then if you don't notice it at all, it doesn't really matter. But if you do start to notice it a little bit and you start to understand it a little bit more, you can let it guide you a little bit. I know it sounds ridiculous because I'm talking about medieval times, or just generally that idea is kind of a ridiculous thing, but it's not necessarily about what the thing is, but more so along the lines of what those things represent. It's weird to think about it like that, but more so common themes in completely different areas are kind of trying to guide you in a weird way into something that you're, I wouldn't want to say destined to do, but more so into a good nature of things. Now, that's how I personally see it as. I see it as signs to say that, hey, you're going in the right direction. Keep going. It's like subtle signs from the universe. And we will talk about signs, but in a completely different episode because that's a little bit different. But this part, it is a subtlety that unless you are aware of it or notice it, it won't tell you. But if you do notice it, maybe you can use it to your advantage as to knowing whether or not you are going on the right pathway. So for me on this time, I noticed the two things, and it was just a coinky-dink, right? It was just a coincidence, whatever. But I can tell you right now from hindsight that maybe I messed up somewhere and stopped doing what I was supposed to be doing, and I started looking too hard at it. And that's the other thing. Sometimes you're looking too hard for the sign, or too hard at these things that are keep occurring, and then thus you kind of lose it. It's kind of like once you super focus on something, you either you can't see it or you see it too much. You know, that's the only thing you see. It's one of those weird things, but it's kind of crazy that these things also kind of happen, you know? There is certain levels of happenstance, of course, but I feel like most of the time things don't just happen like that. Obviously, there are certain things like holidays and other big worldly events that will cross over into other things. A giant game just happened recently, and thus that was something that was everywhere. But if that's just a cultural shift of things and not something that is completely different from one thing to the next thing to the other. And that's usually when it means something. I feel like a lot of the times when it's one thing and you go to the next thing and it's completely different. So let's say you eat fish one day and then the next day you have somebody that you haven't talked to in a while talk to you about fish. Say somebody emails you a fish from a different company for some reason, where it's just nothing interconnected, but yet it has all a similar line down. You could think of it as like a thread that is happening in your world, and if you follow it, if it happens and it keeps going, that means you're probably going in the right direction. Whatever that thread may be is very weird. It might give you something, it might be nothing, but if you follow the thread most of the time, I feel like it will lead you to good things. And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises not filmed. None. Exercises skipped. Also none. Got everything in, thankfully. I'm on my way home. It is still cold, and it's going to be cold for the next few months. Winter arc. But anyways, back to the main subject matter. How I personally use synchronicities personally, or how I see them as, is the way that if I see them more and more frequently as time progresses, I feel like that is more so of a sign that I am progressing in the correct direction that I'm supposed to be going. That I'm supposed to be taking these signs as something that I should pick up on. Not necessarily that, it's not that I'm only searching for these things, but I'm searching for these things are finding me, and I notice them. I'm not trying to go out to notice them, if that makes any sense. I'm not going out of my way to do these things. But every time that something like this occurs in multiple facets, like I'm talking about like 6 or 7 things that are in the same ballpark or realm, I all of a sudden know that I'm heading towards the right direction with where I'm going in life, and that's a good thing, because you have to see it as a good sign of the universe telling you that you're tapping into something greater and beyond you. One day we're going to talk about the greater unconscious and how we tap into it from time to time, aka dreams. We subconsciously tap into it, and the archetypes that go along with it, and a whole bunch of shit like that. But we'll get to there when we get there. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff before that. But that is also going to be some fun stuff, but it's definitely next level stuff. So we'll talk about that, but I always feel like if you're doing it right and you start seeing synchronicities in your world, that means you're starting to align with your upper self, your next level of self, your higher being of self, and you're starting to connect to a different world that is telling you where to go, basically. And I feel like it may be a little woohoo to think about that, but sometimes you have to wonder why you're noticing these things, or when you do notice them, why are they being shown to you? Like, it's as if you're getting a good sign from the universe that you're on the right path for some reason or another. Whether it be something small or something large, you're on the right path because you're noticing it, and the world is telling you something. And notice it if you can, because sometimes it will be there, but you don't even notice it because you're so far concentrated in something else that you won't even realize that it's happening to you. And thus, when you don't see it, well, you'll see it before, and then it's too late, and then all of a sudden you're veered off because you're thought about something else and you're not going into the pathway that the world was trying to tell you to go down. Now, am I going to go down the medieval knights or go to medieval times as a thing? No, not really. But it's something that just happened to happen, and it's just a small little coincidence that I won't necessarily take so heavily, but I also won't take lightly as well. I think taking things lightly like that is where things will be lost in the shuffle, and you won't really see the bigger and grander picture that the world is trying to paint to you. Maybe next time we'll talk about painting the world and all this other stuff, and, you know, the universe trying to tell you things and all that other stuff. Signs, there you go. We'll get to that in a different episode, though, because that's going to be a heavy topic. But with that being said, tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. This one's definitely a next level woohoo one, a longer part of a series that's just going to keep on growing and continuing on. I have much more to talk about when it comes to synchronicity in the grander scheme of things and all that other stuff. I personally, this is how I use it. Not everybody uses it in this sort of fashion. That's how I believe it is to be in my world, but it might not be in yours. Let me know in the comments below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please take care out there. Stay safe, stay warm, and keep it heavy. I'll see you in the next one. Peace!